The night Adrian Vale returned to Black Hollow, the wind carried a sound that did not belong to the living. It moved through the forest like a whisper, soft, broken, almost grieving. The mountains surrounding the small Canadian town stood like silent witnesses, their peaks hidden behind slow-moving clouds. It was early October, the season when the trees bleed gold and crimson. But tonight, there was no beauty in the air, only memory. Adrian had not planned to return. For 5 years, he had avoided this place. 5 long years. Since the night the lake swallowed the only person he had ever loved, Elara Whitmore. The tires of his car rolled slowly over the cracked asphalt road. Every turn felt familiar, and that familiarity tightened something inside his chest. The abandoned gas station at the entrance of town still flickered with a broken neon sign. The same grocery store with chipped paint, the same church bell tower. Nothing had changed, except the silence. Black Hollow had always been quiet, but this was different. It felt like the town itself was holding its breath. Adrian parked outside his childhood home, a 2-story wooden house near the edge of the forest. The porch light was broken. The windows were dark. His father had passed away last winter, leaving the property to him. That was the only reason he was back. At least, that's what he kept telling himself. As he stepped out of the car, the cold air hit his face. He could smell pine, damp soil, and something faintly metallic, like rust or blood. He froze. For a moment, he thought he heard it. A voice, a whisper carried by the wind. Adrian. Soft, feminine, familiar. He turned sharply toward the forest. Nothing, just trees, swaying gently. He swallowed hard. Lack of sleep. Stress. That's all. He grabbed his suitcase and walked toward the front door. The wooden steps creaked beneath his weight. The key trembled slightly in his hand as he unlocked the door. The house smelled of dust and forgotten time. Inside, everything was covered in white sheets, furniture, frozen like ghosts beneath fabric. He closed the door behind him, and the sound echoed deeper than it should have. Too deep. He walked slowly through the hallway, his boots leaving faint marks in the dust. Every object felt like a memory, waiting to attack him. A framed photograph still hung on the wall, near the stairs. He stopped. It was from senior year. Him and Elara, standing by Raven Lake, laughing, her long dark hair blowing across her face, her pale fingers gripping his arm. She had always been cold, even in summer. People used to joke about it. He reached out and touched the frame. The glass felt icy, not cool, icy. He pulled his hand back quickly. The heating in the house wasn't even on. Then, a sudden thud echoed from upstairs. Adrian's heart jumped. He stood still, listening. Silence. Then, another sound. Slow, dragging, as if something heavy was being pulled across the floor above him. He grabbed the flashlight from his bag and slowly climbed the stairs. Each step groaned in protest. His breath felt louder than the noise. Halfway up, the dragging stopped. The hallway upstairs was dark. His flashlight beam cut through the blackness, illuminating closed bedroom doors. His old room was at the end. The door was slightly open. He was sure he had left it closed. A chill ran down his spine. "Hello?" he called softly. No answer. He pushed the door open. The room looked untouched. His old desk, the bed, the bookshelf, everything covered in dust, except the window. It was wide open. Cold wind rushed inside, moving the curtains violently. He stepped forward slowly. Outside, the forest stretched endlessly into darkness, and then He saw it, down near the tree line, a figure, standing still, long dark hair, a white dress, watching him. His chest tightened. He whispered, "Elara." The figure tilted its head, slowly. Then it smiled, not warmly, not lovingly, but knowingly. The wind howled. The bedroom door slammed shut behind him. The flashlight in his hand flickered. Once, twice, then died. Complete darkness.
Adrian's breath caught in his throat as the fingers around his wrist tightened. They were real, cold, so cold it burned his skin. He tried to pull away, but the grip only tightened, firm, possessive. Then a voice whispered right behind him, soft and close, "Adrian." It wasn't coming from outside or from the forest. It was inside the room, inside the darkness. His heart pounded wildly in his chest as he tried to calm himself, whispering, "This isn't real. You're imagining it." Slowly, with fear in his voice, he said, "Elara." The fingers loosened, and the darkness in front of him began to shift. Like fog pulling away from a lake, a figure formed in the weak beam of his fallen flashlight. She stood there between him and the window, wearing a white dress soaked as if it had just come out of water, her long black hair wet and clinging to her face. Her bare feet hovered slightly above the wooden floor. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes were no longer warm. They were dark, endless, like Raven Lake, the night she died. Adrian's voice trembled as he whispered, You drowned." Her lips curved into a faint, chilling smile. "I waited," she said. The room grew colder, frost forming along the edges of the window, his breath turning into mist. "I tried to save you," Adrian said desperately. "I went back into the water. I almost drowned too." But Elara slowly tilted her head and whispered, "You let go." The memory slammed into him, storm clouds above, the dock breaking beneath them, her slipping into the water, his hand gripping hers as something beneath the surface pulled her down. The pressure, the force, the moment his grip slipped, or did he let go? "I didn't," he said weakly. She floated closer, the wood beneath her darkening like it was absorbing invisible water. "You promised. Forever," she whispered, her voice echoing unnaturally through the room. Suddenly, the house creaked violently, as if something massive moved beneath it. The air filled with the smell of lake water, mud, and decay. The windows slammed shut behind her, and on the fogged glass words slowly appeared. "You left me." Adrian shook his head in panic. "No, I stayed. I searched for days. They dragged the lake." But Elara's expression didn't show anger or sadness, only deep disappointment. "You never came back," she said. A deep rumble echoed from beneath the floor and water began seeping through the wooden planks. At first just thin streams, then more, until cold water touched his boots and began rising quickly. "Elara, stop!" he shouted, but she only drifted closer. That's when he noticed the bruises around her wrists, finger-shaped marks that weren't his. Something else had held her. Something else had dragged her down. "You weren't alone," he whispered. Her face finally cracked, pain and fear flashing across it. Behind her, the wall darkened like spreading ink, and a tall, distorted shadow began to form, watching them. The room shook as the water reached his knees. "Elara, what took you? What's in the lake?" he demanded. Her mouth opened, but the voice that came out was not hers. It was deep, broken, ancient. "He belongs to us." The shadows stretched across the ceiling as the water turned darker and thicker. Adrian tried to run, but an invisible force pushed him back. Elara reached forward and placed her hand on his chest, and suddenly everything changed. He was no longer in the room. He was underwater, surrounded by coal-black darkness with no surface, no light. Below him, hundreds of pale faces stared upward, their mouths whispering, their eyes wide and waiting. At the bottom, Something massive moved, something ancient and hungry. Hands brushed against his legs, then grabbed him, pulling him downward into the abyss. He tried to scream Elara, but no sound came out. She appeared in front of him, floating peacefully in the water, her expression soft, almost loving. "Stay," her voice echoed inside his mind. His lungs burned, his vision faded, and the shadow behind her wrapped around her body like a second skin. She reached out her hand, one last time, and this time Adrian didn't know if he wanted to pull away